What is a subtle sign that someone is really intelligent? People who use analogies to explain concepts to others. It's a form of code switching, and integrating concepts on the fly is a clear indicator someone is both socially and conceptually intelligent. Edit. As many have pointed out, not all analogies are helpful or make sense to others. So a useful analogy that creates a aha moment for someone is a wonderful thing. An analogy is an association, a mental process of connecting an idea or thing to a relatable image for someone who can then see and digest the initial representation. Not using analogies doesn't mean someone can't be intelligent, and social intelligence doesn't mean social ease and charisma. It means an awareness that one's own understanding and experience often has to be translated in ways that others can relate to. So to some extent, yeah, that's true. But you also have to take into consideration that there's a false equivalent. Some people might make analogous associations, but sometimes the association is like apples to oranges and they insist they're the same thing. So I agree. Analogies are a great way to explain concepts, but you also have to be aware of the false equivalent. Story 2. The smartest professor I had in engineering school was also the most humble. She was an astounding human being. By week 2, she knew everyone's names by heart in the intro engineering course in college with like 180 students. Later, in upper division classes, people would occasionally ask some really stupid questions, like it happens. You get so deep into some fluid mechanics derivation or something you forget, something really basic. People would ask a question like this and everyone would be thinking like, wow, how did you even make it this far? But then it's like she would spot the flaw in their understanding so perfectly and then respond with such clarity and wisdom that the person asking the question would look less stupid and the whole class would be enlightened. And here's the thing, I pride myself on being really good at that exact skill. I tutored a lot of people. I was easily one of the brightest among my peers. But that woman was on another level. It was mind-blowing. And it wasn't just her intelligence, but her organizational skills, discipline, consistency, and yet she was so humble. She was quiet and physically quite small, but she just exuded competence and immediately commanded every room she walked into. I've never seen anything quite like it. Story 3. It's weird because I've met some remarkably intelligent people who are insecure and or socially awkward. Like not being rude, but legitimately may not be neurotypical. And they don't fall under any of the categories that are being described in this thread. Most of these comments seem to be based around people who are intelligent and humble, which, although incredibly admirable, is not necessarily a guaranteed intersection. It seems like the focus here is more on people who are both socially and conceptually intelligent, but there's plenty of very intelligent people who are in one or the other categories. As an example, a fair amount of the really intelligent people I've met rarely ask questions or carry much of a conversation at all. They make mental notations of information they've digested and then go and learn more about the concepts independently. Or, if someone is struggling to keep up with their concepts, they can get bored and move on. As nice as it is to think that intelligence is backed by social skills, it's frequently not. As a primary example is that Stephen Hawking's work was slowed down tremendously when he had to explain concepts to the people he worked with, because it frequently would take him longer to adequately explain the concepts than to come up with them. But because his physical limitations, he had to go through the process anyways. I'm not saying that intelligent people are unable to explain concepts or unwilling to ask questions, but if they feel that the work could be done more efficiently by doing independent work or research, they may not say much at all. Their learning patterns and socializing skills don't necessarily dictate pure intelligence. Sometimes it's just a marker for being both intelligent and being able to effectively read others, or socially apt. Although this is just my personal experiences, other may have differing ones. And statistically speaking, if most folks upvoting feel that how willing someone is to admit lack of understanding or ability to expand on complex concepts simply is a better identifying qualifying factor for intelligence, it probably is. I'm guessing. I just had the anomalistic personal experiences so far. Edit. Wow, this got much larger than I expected. Y'all are awesome and have some rad insights. I can't respond to everyone, but some excellent points were brought up, and I want to get them into the post. 1. The question said subtle. This is 100% correct. I guess when I was thinking, I just felt that a style of intelligent person I had frequently met wasn't being shown. But someone nodding and researching things later isn't a very subtle cue, so I can see why the responses would be addressing a more vocal, intelligent person. 2. Some intelligent people are egotistical. This is something I've found to be accurate, and this is 100% in my opinion and based on experiences talking with friends, colleagues, but a lot of that, I think, has to do with these folks being picked on or standing out when they were young. Their intellect made them stand out, and so they started using it as an armor for why they didn't fit in. And sometimes they led to an ego because they lack self-confidence in other areas, and so they doubled down on feeling proud of their intelligence. This isn't good, but I think we all have our, well, maybe not all, own self-preservation mechanisms that we learned young, and sometimes it takes a while to grow out of them, if ever. Mine jumps between humor being overly logical and disassociating because, feelings hurt bad, won't feel good. 3. Intelligence manifests very differently from person to person, and trying to discern intellect is very challenging. Some of the smartest yet most socially challenged people I know work with people who understand them at a pretty fundamental level and can be excellent at arbitration between them and folks who get lost in one-on-one conversations. Having intelligent bridge people is also incredibly important because a brilliant STEM engineer might have trouble figuring out how to get funding from a banking institution, but a less conceptually intelligent, more socially apt STEM colleague can make an exceptional mediator to help finance a joint venture. The cool thing about people is we can work together to shore up each other's weaknesses and make some rad crap. And then 4, there's some really smart folks in this post, and I was loving learning from and chatting with all of you. Thanks. Story 4. They apply knowledge from one realm into a new and relevant situation. For instance, one person described a situation, might have been on Reddit, where they were a new assistant in academic research lab and fixing a snag that stumped all the senior teachers, including the professor. The team was trying to video record their project using a strobe light, and their footage wasn't working as planned. When no one else made progress at diagnosing or solving the problem, the most junior individual spoke up and suggested that the strobe could be out of phase. They remembered that video typically records at a rate of 24 frames per second, and explained that along with suggesting a change to the strobe's flash rate, it would coincide with the recording. This worked, and it really raised up that individual's reputation within the group. Inwardly, they were almost embarrassed about the source of this knowledge. They had a gaming hobby back in high school and had taken some video footage of that and discovered the standard frame rate while playing around in editing software. But they remembered that detail years later and realized it made a difference in a completely different context. That is intelligence. Story 5. You can honestly just tell by their vibes, the way they compose themselves, talk, write, think, explain, etc. What I find the most interesting is that intelligent people, in my experience, are more likely to be less cold or fact-driven and more theoretical and creative. For example, if an intelligent person were to read a certain stat, fact, idea, etc., they are likely to have very interesting theoretical extrapolations. My friend qualified for the Mensa membership, and whenever we talk, his mindset always strays towards very interesting outlooks. He has certain ideas that I would never have even thought about. It's actually very fun to talk to intelligent people. The way they are able to absorb information like a sponge and apply that information is very eye-opening. There is a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, surround yourself with people smarter than you. This is some of the greatest life advice you can ever take. Because when you listen to these intelligent people and you absorb their information like that, it truly raises you up. But you also start to recognize their traits, and it enhances you not just on the intellectual level, but like on the emotional, empathetic level. It really is worth it to make sure that you surround yourself with people who help lift you up. Story 6. This is more of a hit or miss one, but in casual conversation, they're good at puns or wordplay. Making good puns, especially spontaneously, requires a high level of understanding in whatever language is being spoken. If they tell you a pre-constructed joke that has a punchline that is a pun line, if you will, you can't really tell because they could have had a lot of time to come up with it, like me, for instance, or they could have memorized it from somewhere. But spontaneous puns generally mean they're processing your conversation multiple interpretations at once in an intelligent way. Story 7. A lot of these responses seem more about self-confidence. Admit you're wrong? Confidence. Admit you don't know something? Confidence. Change your opinion when presented with new information? Confidence with a dash of intelligence. Intelligence indicators, in my opinion. The ability to quickly grasp and apply new concepts is a huge indicator. The ability to clearly communicate concepts across specialties, huge education, or experience gaps. Using generic problem-solving skills on new and unfamiliar problems without prior knowledge of the space. Story number 8. At the grocery store, usually between customers, a till person will poke at the bags or wipe the belt or whatever to look busy. There's a young girl at our local store who busies herself as usual, except sometimes she will look around at customers. Not open mouth, 1,000-yard stare, but actually looking at customers. She's watching them, studying them. I spent almost 20 years in security, and the way she studied customers was exactly the way I did it. I thought it was very interesting. I shared it with my wife, who's a teacher, who told me she's actually one of the smartest students in the school. I knew it. Story 9. To be able to shift perspective and scope of a problem with ease. For instance, if discussing economic issues to understand the ramifications that a policy would have on people who aren't just poor, rich, urban, suburban, educated, ignorant, etc., then to understand how those audiences would accept or reject those policies. Everyone has opinions, but few people consider that to realizing those opinions into reality have consequences, and even fewer are willing to articulate what consequences they are willing to accept or reject. In simple words, it's just thinking it through. But I find this separates those who engage with topics from those who just wish for magical ponies while bullshitting about problems. So this kind of goes in line with Miyamoto Musashi's philosophy of know one thing, know 10,000, or I guess the other way of saying it is a single duel is the same as moving armies, right? Navigating armies. You fight a single duel as you would fight a large-scale battle and vice versa. And it's that ability to shift perspective from something more personal to something large. You know, the concepts that are found within in that particular art or perspective of problem solving is the same, right? It's a general essence that you can then apply and then scale. That's kind of how I'm interpreting that. Story 10. It depends on the definition. My husband has rebuilt cars, knows what every sound in a car, truck, or motorcycle probably means and what needs to be done to fix it. Some issues he knows how to fix. Some issues he leaves to the experts. He knows his limitations. That is intelligence right there. He knows building codes and can do pretty much anything in our home, including electrical, plumbing, and structural codes. Everything is up to code. In the house he bought a year before we met. He's built 3 computers since I met him 6 years ago, including the one I'm currently using. He understands RAM and ROM and all sorts of other terms that I can't keep in my head that are computer related. He knows exactly what's needed to make the computer work properly and how to get the most out of every machine. His friends call him for advice about anything they want to fix or change in their homes, as he knows the answers and can explain it to them in a way that they can understand. If they're working on a project, he'll drop everything, especially if he thinks they're in over their head, just to help them. There are a few things he can't do, like painting, so he hires people for those things. He can't spell worth a damn, not even his siblings' names. Whenever he's using a computer, I often get called into whatever room he's in just to spell a word or two and or to help him find something on whatever page he's trying to read on the computer. On the other hand, I can spell. That's my superpower. I can also knit, embroider, and crochet, but haven't in years. I'd have to say of the two of us, he's the intelligent one. Because of how he looks and acts, people underestimate him all the time until they get to know him. They there's really not much he can't do and do well, including cooking. Story 11. My paternal grandma is really intelligent, I think. She went to secretarial school in the 1950s, but never really worked, so I wouldn't call her highly educated or anything, but I think she could have gone far in higher education if she'd attempted it. I'll explain something to her and ask her if I'm making sense. She's 90 years old. I wouldn't be at all surprised if I said something that went over her head from time to time, but she doesn't miss a step. Whenever I describe a situation or concept to her and ask her if I'm making sense, she will repeat the thing I said back to me using different wording and her own examples to prove she absolutely understood. I don't know many other people who do that. She's also happy to change her stance on anything when presented with new information. And a lot of times, she'll bring it up again months later and thank you for showing her a new perspective. She isn't just swayed by me because I'm her granddaughter. She's the same way with everyone else I've ever seen interact with her. TLDR, more people should be like my 90-year-old grandma, who is not a dumbass and actually listens to people. Story 12. Some intelligent people, especially when they are highly logical, have Asperger's. And to be fair, as someone who has family and relatives with the disorder, I'm not saying that is a bad thing. On the contrary, if you aren't cognitively impaired, Asperger's can make you behave and think in ways that is beneficial to learning and technical work. You can be a genius and not have Asperger's, and then you can be socially competent. But even for smart people without Asperger's, that isn't necessarily the norm. School and other children usually don't play nice with anyone special, either smart or cognitively impaired, making them kind of an outcast, which affects their social development. And since they can find learning so intriguing, they might just ditch the whole social thing anyway. But yes, most of the comments here are bullcrap or targeted towards emotional intelligence, which is something people love to throw around, usually to feel better about themselves. Story 13. They are observant and react according to what's about to happen, not what's happening right now or worse, what has already happened. You see them act before it's needed, and their actions entirely prevent future issues. They've already analyzed what's about to happen, decided their role in the situation, and then acted in a way that optimizes the situation. I've hired multiple assistants, and I can immediately tell which are the intelligent ones by doing a simple task with them. The dumb ones lack any foresight and only react to what's happening right now. The intelligent ones plan a few steps ahead. A good example of this is during an event we're hosting, we were setting up decorations. My intelligent assistant was watching and getting the next few items ready that might be needed without prompting. When I needed tape, tape was already being offered without any verbal communication required. The dumb assistants need you to actively tell them every time you need something. I guarantee you every single one of those people that you're calling intelligent has ADHD. I'm not entirely sure I would call that intelligence, but I guarantee you they have ADHD. Story 14. Look, having nuclear, my uncle was a great professor and scientist and engineer, Dr. John Trump at MIT. Good genes, very good genes, okay, very smart. The Wharton School of Finance, very good, very smart. You know, you're a conservative Republican. If I were liberal, if I ran as a liberal Democrat, they would say, I'm one of the smartest people anywhere in the world. It's true, but when you're a conservative Republican, they try, do they do a number? That's why I always start off, went to Wharton, was a good student, went there, did this, built a fortune. You know, I have to give my credentials all the time because we're a little disadvantaged. But you look at the nuclear deal, the thing that really bothers me, it would have been so easy, and it's not as important as these lives are. Nuclear is so powerful. My uncle explained that to me many, many years ago, and the power, and that was 35 years ago. He would explain the power of what's going to happen, and he was right. Who would have thought? But when you look at what's going on with the 4 prisoners, now, it used to be 3, now it's 4, but when it was 3, and even now, I would have said, it's all in the messenger. Fellas, it is fellas, because, they haven't figured out the women are smarter right now than the men. So, it's going to take them about another 150 years. But the Persians are great negotiators. The Iranians are great negotiators. So, and they just killed us. This is horrible. That was incredibly painful and difficult to read. So please, I hope you get what that was saying. Oh man. I tell you what, you know you're subtly intelligent if you understand everything that just was said, and not like literally. Story 15. Their problem resolution strategies. Most people think that being right and having the other person see your correctness is the goal of problem resolution. Intelligent people know when being correct is less important than reaching the goal. Most of the time, that goal is to preserve the relationship or help the other person retain face while helping them see the solution that you have already arrived at is the best for both parties. Occasionally, the best solution is to allow the other party to feel they have won and save their powder for another charge. Either way, being correct is easy. Reaching the real goal takes a deeper understanding of people and circumstances. Story 16. They are really interested in a very wide variety of subjects and can talk to anyone about what that person does. Another sign is multiple skill areas. I went to Oxford many years ago, and one of the things I noticed is that people who study pure mathematics often have an affinity for music, and oddly enough, crosswords. A lot of the postgraduates were not only studying at the very highest levels in their subject area, but they were often very high-level athletes as well, or writing a book, or setting up charities in their spare time. Very intelligent people tend to have unusual hobbies, and have as hobbies things that other people would consider to be a career area. Really high intelligence shows up across multiple areas, not just one. I have met people who are absolute savants in one area, but completely useless in others. I don't consider this to be a truly high level of intelligence because I've seen the next level up, where people are savants and also astonishingly talented in other areas as well. Story 17. What many people misunderstand is the belief that intelligence is an abundance of knowledge. However, intelligence has absolutely nothing to do with how much you know. By that logic, every baby is an idiot, much less anybody younger than 25 is an idiot. Intelligence is not measurable by how much you know, but how much you don't know. I'll give you an example. Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory is seen as the smartest character in the series because of his extensive knowledge of stuff. However, he's an idiot. In fact, I can 100% say without a doubt in my mind that Sheldon is the dumbest character in The Big Bang Theory. Sheldon spends most of the series either sucking himself off or bringing down others, mocking and belittling them for not knowing as much as him. A smart person wouldn't make fun of someone for not knowing information, much less shove in others' faces how much they know. Sheldon's biggest issue is that he believes he knows it all, a characteristic not found in smart people. A real smart person knows that they know nothing and that they have much more to learn, as well as assisting others along the way if they don't know either. Story 18. It's basically impossible to tell. A lot of people here seem to think admitting you don't know something makes you intelligent. No, it makes you humble and not a fraud. Someone can be incredibly intelligent and also a know-it-all bullcrapper. It's easy to tell when someone is a bullcrapper. Just ask them questions you already know the answer to, something you're specialized in. They'll either give you novel genius insight that makes you question your own expertise and the standard practices of your profession, or will give you bullcrap nonsense. Bullcrapping itself is a thought exercise anyway. Witty people are often very capable of making up answers as they go. Saying you don't know is kind of lazy and should be reserved for safety concerns and serious topics, or topics a person isn't interested in discussing as a way to end the conversation. I can't completely agree with this. Now, I do get the whole calling people out on their BS thing. That's actually a pretty cool tactic. But I don't necessarily think that I don't think you can't tell, and B, I don't think it comes down to either somebody's a BSer or somebody's an absolute expert in what it is. Things are not that binary. Let's be honest. There's always so much gray space. Story 19. I have always thought about intelligence like vehicles. Some people have minds like dirt bikes. They are really nimble and can quickly run through an idea faster than others to get to the end. They are also comfortable rushing into uncharted mental trails. But they cannot carry big ideas and have a real hard time bringing someone else along for their mental ride. Cannot explain it, teach, or help. They are quick or witty, but cannot really solve anything for anyone else. Memory storage is shite. Some people have minds like semi or tandem trucks. They're not going to solve problems quickly, and if they try to go off the scripted thought path, they're going to get stuck. But they can move huge ideas, and when they set to a well-defined path, they get big crap done. They can handle a huge load of information and make it work to a specific task. Also good at collecting and holding information, and might have anything, facts, thoughts, carried around when needed. Some people have minds like sports cars. They are flashy and can rev their engine and go really fast, but only around a preset track. They can ramble off any stat from whatever they are focused or fascinated on, and might be fast at solving math or problems from point A to B when it's a straight line that anyone will eventually get to, just not as fast. Medium to low storage, but cocky and able to sell their thoughts and fast thinking as if it was the best thing out there. Some people have minds like quads. Excels at exploring and mapping out new ideas, can do a bit of work while they are there, and can lead others into uncharted territory, but they seem totally out of place and have trouble keeping up when asked to travel along the regular mental highways. Great at creative problem solving, but total shite at standardized testing, memorization, or routine. Most people, though, have basic SUVs that can go fast when they feel safe, usually along preset mental routes, can carry a few people along and explain an idea, have enough storage to manage everyday life, memory, or facts, and capable of some off-road exploration. Some are more reliable than others, but overall can generally get where they need to go. Asking them to carry really big ideas, and they will need multiple trips, and can only handle it when broken down into smaller loads. I actually really like this idea of how different people and how their intelligence is like vehicles. I think this is a really cool breakdown. I personally like the different kinds of intelligence, kinesthetic, spatial, mathematical, linguistic. Like I personally prefer that breakdown, but this is actually really cool, and I like how they broke it down. I honestly think they can break it down more. I'd love to hear more about this. That's cool. Story 20. In this thread, people who are good at explaining things, good teachers, and humble people are apparently the really intelligent ones. Now, I get it. Saying that this indicates intelligence does not institute that not having these qualities makes you less intelligent, although I think there are different kinds of intelligences, and some of the most brilliant people you will not even realize until you speak to them. Some people have tried to illustrate this in media, such as Rain Man. He obviously is very gifted, but only to some extent, where in other aspects he lacks. Just because he doesn't understand how to be humble or be able to explain things well doesn't make him unintelligent. But obviously, in the areas he lacks in, he is absolutely the polar opposite of what would be considered intelligent. Well, I'll just go back to my point. Not having any of the signs people think constitutes intelligence does not prove the opposite. Story 21. In terms of social intelligence, I met someone who left me floored recently. Only 8. There was a potentially awkward situation involving me, her, and her mom at work. She had the social awareness to make a somewhat uncomfortable situation between me and her mom less awkward by leading a light conversation with me. In the things we talked about, which were a lot, she showed a level of insight and curiosity about the world that I rarely see in adults day to day. And while her book smarts are super impressive, her ability to read the room and redeem a potentially awkward situation between adults is something I've never seen in someone that young. We left only spellbound by that experience and still think about it every day. And good on her mom for just letting her kid do her thing that day. Story 22. They are curious about things and ask a lot of questions. They are not afraid to admit they don't know something, rather than BSing their way through a fake explanation. Being able to read the room, For example, knowing when to be funny and listening instead of talking if they aren't sure what to say or what dynamic of the group is. Acknowledging the fact that they don't think they're smart or that they don't know everything. Many smart people I know don't think they're smart. I don't mean in a self-deprecating way, more so just being unassuming and knowing the fact that they don't know everything. They admit when someone they disagree with has a good point, and they don't use personal attacks in arguments. Story 23. I just want to point out that this is also a list of charlatans' tactics, taking examples from current best comments, explaining something complex in simple terms, eliding details that would lead to true and complete understanding in such a way that you don't notice what you don't know. When they explain something, they make the listener feel intelligent. The Reddit classic. This is the mother sauce of a lot of great Undertaker-style pastas because if you can convince someone that believing you makes them smart, they'll really want to believe you. They know when their knowledge ends and say something to the extent of, I don't know, and anything else I say on the topic is ignorant speculation. Nothing a wolf likes more than to dress up like a sheep. Feigning humbleness is one of a family of tone of voice tactics, where you leverage emotional responses the same way you could set hateful lyrics to a pleasant melody. They can generally consider an idea which opposes their worldview without necessarily accepting it. The better you understand someone else's position, the better you can subtly misrepresent it. This also has tone of voice elements as above, since it makes you appear empathetic. This is a slippery slope, and I'm not entirely sure that it's the tactics per se, but the intent and the goal behind it. That in and of itself is difficult enough to discern, regardless of who you are. But when the person receiving it starts to recognize a degree of cognitive dissonance and a sense of manipulation, you're probably on the receiving end of something malicious. My 2 cents. Story 24. For me, it's about understanding and grasping opposing viewpoints. They consider the argument and welcome the discussion instead of just simply reiterating their viewpoint. In a way, they argue with themselves over the point, challenging their own beliefs and genuinely considering that they may be wrong. On the same note, instead of simply jumping to conclusions and immediately placing blame, being able to consider, sometimes without prompting, opposing ideas than the natural conclusion on a point or issue. Looking for evidence rather than accepting anecdotes about a problem. To build on that, someone who thinks about the complete problem in every case, not just the problem at hand. For example, what affects the item in question and what that item affects before proposing or implementing a solution. Someone who asks why. Story 25. I just listened to a person speak. I've always found that the most intelligent people are the ones who, when they offer a thought or an opinion, sound like they are reading sentences that are preformed in their minds. Additionally, their sentences are longer and more complex and without grammatical error. They are able to combine several of those sentences into one coherent and complete thought without pausing to rethink, rephrase, edit, or amend for clarity. In summary, a sign that someone is really intelligent is that they possess the ability to instantly verbalize a complete thought in a concise, fluent manner. That kind of comes back to the whole different kind of intelligent thing I was talking about before, where you have, like martial intelligence, linguistic intelligence, spatial intelligence, numerical intelligence, that kind of stuff, right? This sounds like linguistic intelligence. Not so much in the sense of, forming the idea, but being able to do it in such a way that you can say it concisely and understandably in a single sentence without having to repeat yourself. Story 26. So I'm surprised I haven't seen it already, but word choice and sentence structures. It's not always necessary to use complicated vocabulary to accurately and clearly convey an idea or concept to another person, so I'm not necessarily talking about using obscure vocabulary, but more about choosing the most apt word for the situation or intended communication. Often, it is those who are attempting to appear more intelligent than they are that they decide to unnecessarily fill sentences with $10 words when more commonplace ones are sufficient. Likewise, how someone chooses to arrange their words and what sentence structures they employ can be an indicator of intelligence. I remember reading somewhere at some point that people with higher intelligences tend to employ longer and more complex sentences in communication, but I cannot back that up up with the source right this instant. I know this likely isn't super helpful because there are, of course, going to be exceptions where even a very intelligent person is choosing to communicate in a style that does not reflect the level of their capabilities, and it's not something you can really be taught to notice, but I've definitely been able to tell at times that someone is very intelligent solely because of the way they've chosen to construct the sentences they use to communicate an idea, concept, process, etc. TLDR, word choice and sentence composition, but not necessarily universally applicable for various reasons. I see what you did there. You used a lot of conjunction words to make one giant run-on sentence. Bravo. Story 27. My grandpa is one of the smartest people I've known. He's got a doctorate in astronomy and works as an adjunct professor in his retirement. I've always known he was smart, even since I was a child, because his favorite thing to do was teach and share knowledge. Once I hit my teenage years and started taking more of an interest in his line of study, I found out just how smart he was. We've shared extensive conversations about various theories in relative physics, performed thought experiments on plausible methods of near light speed travel in space, and even discussed particle physics at length. His knowledge base is vast, but he has never made me feel dumb for asking questions and wanting to learn. He downplays his brilliance, and I think that's truly telling of just how smart he actually is. Story 28. There are a few types of intelligences. Some are associated with physical skills, some with computational, and some with communicational skills. So if we are looking to know if someone is intelligent by interacting with them, they have to be intelligent in also the way we chose to communicate. For example, being able to articulate your thought in a written format is a form of intelligence. Being able to interact verbally or with body language, another. Being good at logical thinking, a third, etc. For example, I believe someone is intelligent if, despite them not initially knowing something, they are able to quickly understand the concepts and then apply them with their own unique knowledge and skills. I'm a doctor, and although I don't know about engines, I do understand the principles and can relate it to things I do know about, like the human heart, etc. Story number 30. Many people here are confusing intelligence with other good qualities they wish to see in an intelligent person. A group of very intelligent people is not unlike a group of really stupid people in that some of them are assholes. Most are decent enough, and a few are really nice. Mostly what I am seeing in the responses are examples of people who are desirable to interact with. Fact is, this does not describe all smart people. Sir Isaac Newton, for example, would fare quite badly by the metrics offered here. He was very thin-skinned and expected folks to accept his conclusions without debate. When there was debate, he often withdrew and refused to interact further with those who offered counter opinions. In his case, I think it was more from awkwardness than from trying to be an ass. Yet, I think we can all agree that Newton was a very smart man. Story 31. These replies are all wrong. Feel-good responses that make them feel like they are saying the right thing that Reddit wants to hear so that they get upvoted and that dopamine release. They're all basically saying being able to explain something in layman's terms. Wrong. That's just being compassionate to another person's lack of knowledge. The real, intelligent people are the ones who play the game of survival and nothing else. Those who can throw someone under the bus and at the same time be altruistic to others only when advantageous, of course. Someone we perceive as a snake and undeserving of their role in society, but is someone able to retain that role despite opposition. Those conquerors of life are the truly intelligent because in the end, they control the flow of the world and ultimately control everyone else. They're the ones that rule empires and claim territory, while the ones beneath them fight among themselves for ego and scraps. We call them fools, yet here we are abiding by their laws. A fool's law. Intelligence isn't empathy. Intelligence is grasping opportunity regardless of how society will view you for it, while being aware of those views and carefully placing yourself in positions that will improve yourself or your situation. Intelligence is being able to worm your way through life nearly untouchable, leaving a legend behind that no one can ever fully understand. No, that's malignant narcissism. That's exactly what that is. Story 32. I skipped 2,000 plus comments, but the first 50 or so seem to be describing emotional intelligence. I'm not sure that I believe in gifted people or geniuses, but based on what I believe you're speaking about when you say intelligent, some things stick out to me about personalities I've encountered. They are very rarely normal and often have a hard time fitting in. They are very good at avoiding what they don't like to do. They are so good at doing the above that they spend most of their time focusing on their interests. They start more than they finish, but they finish more than most, either in quality or quantity. Bonus, the above are all opinions, but this one is purely based on intuition. Look for people that are rarely on their phones in public. Not that you'd be able to see them on their phones otherwise. Story 33. Depends on what type of intelligence you're talking about. For example, if you're one of the few people who knows very, very bad news, that makes you a very lonely person. As someone who knows what's really the cause of the massive problems of this country and why things aren't going to get better, in fact, they're going to get much worse. Trust me when I say that intelligence makes you a lonely, isolated person. You can talk about it, but almost no one understands it, and fewer want to believe it even if they did understand it. Intelligence can be a curse. I envy the idiots that think everything's going to be okay and that God or whomever has their back and this is the best country in the world. Ignorance truly is bliss. Story 34. Intelligence has so many facets. When I meet someone, I often recognize immediately that they're intelligent, usually by the way they talk and expressions they use. They usually aren't loud and don't want to be the center of attention. Also, humor. A dude I met recently at work and the way he talks, the sharp, witty humor, and notably how quick it comes. Doesn't have to think about it for too long. I consider myself to be fairly intelligent, but what I always admire about people I meet for their intelligence and skills, but how they are as a person. The person doesn't even have to be an uber genius or even more intelligent than me overall. Just be impressive in a certain field or aspect. What I admire more than pure intelligence and skill, though, is compassion. So, when I meet someone who's clearly intelligent, but also has compassion and empathy, I definitely want to stick close to them and hear what they have to say and learn more from them. Not just facts, but viewpoints and behavior. Story 35. People who are generally really intelligent ask a lot of questions. Even if the answer seems simple to you, they tend to ask anyway, since intelligence is the ability to attain knowledge and use it to gain more knowledge. They may not even ask anything. They may simply go and learn it on their own, but if asking another person is the easiest route, they may very well take that. They can also seem highly disagreeable. Like, if they are told to do something, they are very likely to respond with a question if they don't understand why. They are also incredible at picking things up quickly. Sometimes, even in the time it takes to have a conversation, they most likely have learned what you are talking about because of how their minds work. When they focus on learning something, it's like their mind turns into a think tank. They are also most likely to be a loner or likely to isolate. They may be generally distant from other people because interaction with other people can be difficult for them, or they tend to rub people the wrong way. They can also be very annoying because they don't agree with everything someone else says because what they know or understand dictates otherwise. To an intelligent person, social norms or societal correctness doesn't mean much compared to being correct. Not in the sense that they have to be right all the time, but if society fully believes A, but in truth B is the answer, they won't accept A, because B is the real answer. Because of this, they seem awkward and may also have horrible social etiquette, as most societal norms are based on being agreeable and being nice over just truthful and correct. Story 36. A lot of people in this thread are basing their answers on the platonic idea of a smart person who is humble, kind, and doesn't make other people feel insecure about their own intelligence. I've worked in academia for over a decade, and I can tell you that most smart people are arrogant pricks from privileged backgrounds who love showing off. And I know the temptation will be to say, oh, well, they may be book smart, but that isn't the same as being intelligent. But like, no, these people are both. They're just also assholes. They can switch it on and off when it suits them. Example, they might be nicer when teaching, but in private, they are effing snakes. Also, I don't think I've ever met a genuinely smart person who isn't at least on the spectrum. So all of your takes about, oh, intelligent person is somebody who genuinely listens and blah, blah, blah. No, that isn't true. Most are laser focused and don't have time to consider your half-baked bullcrap. Story 37. Generally, highly intelligent people can spot other highly intelligent people and don't assume that geniuses are jerks. Maybe because they understand more about intelligence from experience, or maybe because the more intelligent you are, the harder it is to maintain strong prejudices and beliefs and stereotypes. When someone tells me the people on Big Bang Theory are so smart, it makes me cringe because a lot of people really seem to believe that big words plus bad social skills plus job they couldn't do equals genius. Very opposite from true in most cases. Second, when grouped together, intelligent people often pick up on things faster and laugh about things together. When I've gone to Mensa meetings, only requires IQ in the top 2%, not 0.25% like genius, but still highly intelligent. People laugh a lot when things are funny, and often they're silly situational things you pick up on that aren't worth even talking about, but the joy of noticing it along with someone else makes it an unspoken inside joke. My mom used to complain that my dad and uncle would start laughing together for no reason, and it wasn't until I was older and picked up in situations on why they laughed that I realized this was what was happening. Third thing I've noticed in life, but again confirmed situationally for me by Mensa, is how normal most highly intelligent people are. I went to a Mensa meeting in a rural town, and guess what? There was a farmer and a housewife, a girl in admin at the local college, a couple people in random white-collar jobs, etc. And these people spoke like a farmer, a housewife, and so forth. Intelligence doesn't make you a high earner. It's just a boost if you want to go in that direction. But a lot of intelligent people have trouble holding down a job, or in many cases, follow the career paths they're familiar with or feel a calling towards just like anyone else. And their daily struggles aren't about theoretical physics or ancient history, even though they might be highly capable of making their lives all about those academic pursuits if they wanted to. Story 38. Most answers here describe rather normal people in my honest opinion. That's us. And this thread is kind of self-praising us for how smart we are. The smartest person I know is none of that. He is a pain in the ass. He doesn't like to explain. He doesn't like to ask questions because he knows that he usually knows better. He is stubborn because he knows he is smart and doesn't like to listen to people he knows aren't as smart as him. He also doesn't care if others can follow and understand what he does. That bores him. He tries sometimes, but it slows him down, and he just doesn't have the patience for it. He is nice somewhere deep inside, but he gets annoyed by people and then just labels them as idiots, because they are, compared to him. He lives in his own world a bit, which is lonely. To be honest, if you meet him, I don't think there is any subtle sign that he is smart. You would probably consider him a selfish idiot until you get to work with him and he fixes problems that you still try to understand, and until you talk to him and get a little insight into his world. Story 39. They can simplify anything and everything in order to minimize the amount of brain they spend on it. For example, just yesterday, I overheard a conversation between my friend and his brother. His brother was just saying out loud, nonstop, his debit card number, 16 digits, and my friend perfectly recalled it after an hour or so without writing it anywhere. Later, when I asked him about it, amazed, he said that he stored the number into chunks of 4 and then found a method of storing that chunk in his brain effortlessly. For example, one of the 4 chunks was 4764. He stored it by remembering that 76 is sandwiched between 4s, and the sum of the digits, 7 plus 6 plus 4 plus 4, is 21. The third chunk, 2 plus 1 equals 3. He did individual analysis and a method to simplify the code for each chunk, all in a span of 6 to 7 seconds. Story 40. I love some of these ideas, but having sat through years of college, university faculty meetings, I'm cracking up. Extreme humbleness and the ability to effortlessly explain complex ideas do most definitely not often align with traditional high IQ. Those are diamonds in the rough. From a cognitive science perspective, I'd say the things that most often indicate intelligence are in the moment problem solving abilities, quick adaptation, and the ability to quickly integrate new information with previous knowledge. Sometimes that can look book smart, like other comments above on asking intriguing questions and drawing analogies, but sometimes it can mean a brilliant plumber coming into your jacked up house and quickly and creatively figuring out the perfect course of action. Story 41. In order. When they know they are out of their depth, a dumb person will be too cocky, often thinking they're smarter than they actually are, whereas an intelligent intellectual will know when to say that they need help, but get too smart and the cockiness will either skyrocket or plummet, making them seem far more dumb. When said person can see someone else's viewpoint and consider it, however not accept it, example, all people who listen to the anti-vaxxers, but actually went and did their own research to find that vaccines are actually vital and it's not the government trying to get us. Application of knowledge. So what I mean here is when someone learns something in a situation and can apply it to different unrelated situations perfectly. An example taken from another comment. A study was using a strobe light and a video recorder. The light was out of sync and no one could figure out why the experiment wasn't working except the intern, who had played around with the FPS of video games and somehow retained this scrap of information that allowed the team to fix the project. And finally, and probably the most important, when they ask questions, and that means good, relevant questions that have meaning. The people who can look at a truly bonkers idea and not ask why or how, but what purpose or what would it achieve, and knowing exactly when to use the correct questions. We live in a society that is very quickly changing, so new info is always being learned, and the only true way to understand is to ask questions. Story 42. The ones who don't act as if they're super intelligent. Let me explain. The dumbest people I know are people who feel the need to defend every single thing they say, even when they are wrong. The people who are so insecure about their own intelligence that every time someone says they might be wrong about something, it becomes a huge argument. Huge pet peeve of mine, by the way. But the most intelligent people I've ever met also happen to be some of the quietest, most relaxed people I have ever met. Truly intelligent people know they are smart and don't feel the need to go out and prove that to people. By the way, I'm not just talking school smarts. It can be general intelligence, street smarts, etc. But you have to remember, the smartest people never stop learning. The people with the most incredible brains are the people who are consistently learning new things, the people that have an undying thirst for information. Kano Jigoro, the father of modern judo, once told his students, "When I die, bury me in my white belt." His wish was to be remembered as a student, not as a black belt master. Great leaders see themselves as lifetime learners. They are never satisfied or found thinking they have achieved mastery. The best of the best continually pursue personal growth and skill development. TLDR, smart people shut their mouth. To some extent, I think that's fairly accurate. But also, part of it is smart people can differentiate the fact that they don't know everything. There's more that they don't know that they do know, which is why you'll typically have the fools who go on saying they know everything. There's a saying I like to tell my son: wise men speak when they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something. Story 43. This entire read made me realize my ex, who I thought was incredibly intelligent, who still is, but is a complete jerk, is actually not as intelligent in the way I thought he was. He is a doctor. I'm a nurse. He always talked down to me. Reading through these comments, I was the one who was able to explain in a gentle manner, ask the right questions, and have knowledge about a vast majority of things. He just used his knowledge to put me and others down. Just such a demeaning person. Broke my heart for years. When I finished my MSN, he didn't even say anything. He may be intelligent, but what good is that when you have zero empathy or communication skills, coupled with being verbally abusive? Thanks, guys. Story 44. During the course of my PhD, I've met an insane number of intelligent people. While this thread seems to focus on high social and emotional intelligence, academic intelligence is not necessarily seen through conversation. information. While there are brilliant people that can explain concepts well, what I tend to notice that indicates true intelligence is adaptability. Being able to take any concept or topic and find the connections to their work is amazing. When I sit and meet with my advisor, I'll mention something seemingly disconnected from my project. My advisor then has his aha moment and throws some experimental ideas at me. My wife's advisor does similar things. She runs a statistical analysis on her data and gets no significant results after using multiple methods. He sits down and within an hour has run the data or thought of another perspective to turn all of that seemingly garbage data into statistically significant data. Basically, anyone that can MacGyver something physically or intellectually is intelligence in my book. Doesn't require an advanced degree, as there are thousands of people out there with only basic degrees or trade skills that are very intelligent. Story 45. Intelligence is very common, but very misunderstood. We have mathematicians that are homeless and brain surgeons that don't believe in climate change. Einstein himself had to turn down a political position offered to him by Israel because he had no qualifications for it. We hold up a myth of intelligent people like Iron Man and Sherlock for entertainment, but those people aren't real, can't be real, because nobody has the time and resources to master so many different levels of expertise. And being an expert in something means nothing for the rest of your life. You can die a very intelligent, poor individual after having a very average, uneventful life, while some average intelligent people have changed the whole world off their drive alone. Story 46. When they know the limit of their knowledge, no matter how smart and experienced in a field you are, there's always something new to learn. I had a university professor who is extremely experienced, has over 80 world architectural prizes, etc. He specialized in industrial buildings, and one of his areas of interest, where he had spent a lot of time in research, was optimizing kitchens for industrial buildings. He told us a story of how a student told him that you no longer need different sinks to wash eggs since kitchens now use powdered eggs. Since that was new at the time, he spent the entire evening researching the topic and then told the student he will allow him to have no sinks for egg washing on his project since he is indeed correct. His advice for us was, don't be afraid to question what I say, since I might be wrong. I am rarely wrong, but rarely doesn't mean never. Story 47. Introverted smart, or savantish, will be in the background of complex conversations, quietly absorbing everything said. And when you give them a chance to speak, they have the solution that has factors you hadn't even considered yet all worked out. If you pay attention, you can see it in their expressions as they are figuring the problem out. Kind of clueless as to why solution wasn't obvious to the group. And they will personally have unusual or complex hobbies on the side that they are extremely passionate about. Story 48. People who are really intelligent have something intelligent people don't have: a good memory. As complexity increases, it can often be because of the number of steps involved, not the difficulty of each step. Let's do an example. In your head, take the number 1 and times it by 2, then times that by 2, and again, and again. Don't stop until you can't go higher. Taking any number and multiplying by 2 is straightforward. It isn't that hard, but being able to remember as the number gets up in the hundreds, thousands, or millions is just about remembering the increasing number of steps involved. It has nothing to do with the complexity of doing multiplying any number 0 to 9 by 2. Story 49. The question that pops into my head: what do I consider to be intelligent? Everyone has a different idea of what they think intelligence is. How much you know about certain subjects or how many subjects you know about. I think it's a complex question, depending on who's asking and what intelligence means to them. Now, some people are naturally intelligent, and for some it takes work. In my experience, those I marked as intelligent were the ones I enjoy speaking to about a subject and for great length. I think open-minded people, not necessarily unbiased, but willing to hear another's opinion and understand why they might have that opinion. I myself am an unbiased person and very open-minded. Not saying I'm super intelligent, because I'm not even sure what that entails truly. People say I'm smart, and some days I feel dumb, and ask myself if I'm pretentious or do I really know things? Who cares? I'm autistic, by the way, which is probably why I'm unbiased by default. I like to know everything, not for other people, but for myself. I'm genuinely excited for knowledge, and the one thing that screws me up about death is that I don't have time to know everything. If I'm not too thrilled about a subject, I'll still like to know about it somewhat, but if I'm thrilled about the subject, oh, forget about it. I dive deep into the subject. Also, I don't think it's about what you say, usually. It's how you say it. If you can reach someone with your words, then that's a skill. I went off on a tangent, but I like thought-provoking subjects. I was told from a friend that I should be like a philosopher. I almost took that up in college, but I feel like there's no point. It takes away from staying on your own path. Story 50. Someone who's intelligent does not outwardly show that they are intelligent. My father is a perfect example of this. My dad's the stereotypical handyman dad. That man can practically fix anything he gets his hands on. He's been a mechanic for decades and started learning when he was about 9 years old in his father's repair shop in Puerto Rico. Since then, my father has moved from fixing small issues and troubleshooting for his father to disassembling engines and transmissions, fixing them, and putting them back together using random pictures that he took of it beforehand. He works on rotary engines, which are notoriously difficult to work on, and even on his own 18-wheeler that he uses for work. You would never guess that if you just met him. From that perspective, he would just look like the average trucker from a passerby. In regards to other forms of intelligence, my father is rather remarkable. For someone who learned English when he was around 14 to 15 years old, his skills at English are amazing. If he doesn't quite know what word to use in his sentence, or if he forgot what the word was, he could easily continue his sentence using other words that essentially describe what the word he was going to say was, whereas others would simply pause and try to remember or figure out what word fits best within what they are trying to convey. Creative problem solving is also another strong suit. My father never admits that he's smart or even shows it. He just looks and acts like a person with average intelligence. But I know for a fact he's not just average. Story 51. Behaviors that indicate curiosity as a passion. For example, it's a strong enough motivator that people will ignore or sacrifice other rewards in favor of figuring crap out. Because although their efforts to figure crap out may make them suffer, they'll suffer more if they don't. Again, for example, say two kids are learning some circle math for the first time. You show them that the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared and assign them to use that to solve several practice problems. The goal of the exercise is just to solve the practice problems. Kid A pops that into a calculator for a few practice problems, fastidiously shows their work with the assigned formula on the sheet, finds the correct answers, and gets an A. Good for them. Smart kid. Kid B also pops it into the calculator, demonstrates that they know how to get the same correct answers, and still seems really unsatisfied. Although they know the correct formula, you see that they're also penciling in other calculations in the margins and tinkering with alternative approaches to try to get more insight into what the heck is actually going on with pi r squared that gets it to produce the correct answer. If the assignment is timed, or if they decide to test a theory that they have about an alternate approach by actually using a different method to try to answer the question, then their tinkering could even hurt their grade. There's nothing wrong with kid A. That kid could end up learning math quite well. They're just exhibiting a tendency to be satisfied with instrumental learning. They want to learn the math well enough to use it to accomplish some other goal, and they're satisfied when they do. That's totally adequate for most purposes, and that person could end up being quite successful in some career that requires strong math skills. They're just clearly more interested in obtaining that other goal by learning the skill than they are in learning for its own sake. However, I suspect that Kid B is going to end up being much more sophisticated thinker than Kid A, because Kid's B behavior suggests that curiosity is a primary motivator for them. They know how they're supposed to do the assignment, and they can do that. However, they've also just been exposed to a novel and challenging concept. They understand that they don't grok it, and they're more interested in trying to wrap their head around it than they are in trying to apply the optimal grade-getting strategy. Story 52. They oftentimes try to stay objective and open-minded, always open to learn something, and don't shy away from being corrected, no matter if it is about their field of knowledge or not. Given the correct evidence or good arguments, they will be open to change their opinion on a matter, or at least don't put the other person down for thinking or saying whatever they are. And if it is a discussion, they tend to not make it too subjective, but instead try arguing with neutral and logical arguments and tendencies. If they are asked something or talking about a subject which they are unsure about or don't know the immediate answer to, they might answer with something along the lines of, "I'm not completely sure, but I can try to find out or read up on it." Or perhaps, "I actually don't know that much about this, so I don't think it's appropriate for me to make too many assumptions and thoughts about that." I find less intelligent people to be very subjective, closed-minded, and oftentimes get defensive when talking about a subject which they don't know much about or something which they have a strong opinion on, even if the arguments and science is against them. They also don't want to learn more and don't want to listen to the information that the other person has. It can be hard to break through to them, but really intelligent people are simply more open-minded. Of course, this isn't always the case, but I find it to be so most of the time. Story 53. I am way too late to the party, but I thought I'd put my answer anyway. Intelligent people are something I have no shortage in my life. I work in places where everyone has a graduate degree in math, statistics, physics, and my father has taught physics at Ivy League. When you are around a group of intelligent people and someone stands out, you know basically by how they talk. Generally, they are asking insightful questions and they grasp concepts quickly, so they draw correct conclusions and insight from the information, often before you're even done answering their question. I don't agree with the general idea that intelligent people are able to talk to match the person they are talking to. Some are and some aren't. A lot of people are virtually autistic when you communicate with them verbally, but can express written ideas brilliantly, and others is the converse. Story 54. Intelligence, or the capacity to understand, break down, and or streamline complexity, is how I think of it. I think more than anything that an understanding of causality should be emphasized, the process of cause and effect. You could also call this adaptation and foresight. This is, to me, a profound sign of intelligence, although this sounds very general. If you can see the chain of events in your head, you're able to therefore adapt your behavior to create the best possible circumstances or prevent something negative. I'm not sure if there's a term for this, but seeing that everything requires a solid foundation in order for it to function optimally is also very intelligent. An example would be how a person with strong values, a sense of morality, social skills, good physique, understanding of psychology and character always has something to fall back on and also base their decisions on. This can, however, also create too much of a dogmatic attitude, which is where the ability to adapt comes in handy. Accepting ignorance in oneself is a big one as well. If you can admit that you're wrong, you can create space for something else more constructive to take place. Story 55. They laugh at simple things. The old saying that simple things amuse simple people is actually wrong, because they don't get it. Intelligent individuals, however, will find humor in simple things, because they do not normally consider them. Another is that they may ask questions which at first seem to be rather stupid, or they may point out seemingly simple things that are easily missed. Intelligence is in the details. There was a certified genius in my algebra class in secondary, 6th grade, that asked, when given the question of the two cars traveling from point A, B, and C, about the mileage of the cars and whether we were calculating along actual roads or straight lines. This individual asked a number of other questions, which most in the class took for granted, annoyed the professor, and was laughed at. I have found intelligent people do laugh at simple things. I think it's mostly for an appreciation, or they laugh at certain things that most people don't understand, like irony as a concept. They also tend to have really dark humor. Story 56. Being me, on a more serious note, being good to debate with, actually making good arguments and actually answering or deconstructing those made, also being able to get a silver medal in the International Math Olympics is a good bet too. There was a guy at my school who was insane at it and helped people get through the average level stuff. There was one time in a physics exam where we had to work with an easier appropriation, and that guy busts out some differential equations and some other stuff. The teacher said that crap was something they struggled with, and some of our math teachers, who didn't study it to a PhD, even claimed he was better at it than them while he didn't really want the attention but solved his math problems. He also was a decent pianist, gave a strong performance of Prokofiev's Dance of the Knights on Piano. Has an alternate title, but who cares? In 7th grade, story 57. Asking the same question to multiple people, which results in getting many different angles, opinions, information, and gives you a wider view of the question asked. I worked many jobs, and I'm more of a visual learner. I would use this approach when I have a question on a certain step or even for something that I plan to do that I'm not too polished in. What I learned is many people use different techniques, even if they're doing the same thing. So I would ask multiple people on how, and after getting different answers or demos, I would just try them and keep the best way that was efficient and comfortable for me. Because if I was just to ask one person, I would be stuck in the box, in the one way or one understanding, and miss out on other potential techniques. Another smart move to do, I would ask someone how to do, and I would also ask what can go wrong if done wrong. That's some serious informational FOMO there. I think you might have stumbled on something new. Story 58. I know you say subtle, but maybe a full picture will help you better grasp it. This goes into the mind of my intelligence. My Mensa IQ is 142 to 152 with a 10-point variance. I'm always willing to learn because I believe collective knowledge is the strongest knowledge. On the outside, I'm happy, always willing to help anyone. I'm very humble. I have ADHD. I walk a lot. I pace a lot. There's a lot on my mind. People look at me like the guy is cool. You won't have issues with him, which is true. As someone who's intelligent, I can say I'm very humble until you cross me. Then I could care less if you suffered and died by my hand. I have issues connecting with people socially. It's hard for me to focus on things I don't care about. I don't have a lot of friends because I think a lot of people are stupid and will create more issues for my way of life. I'm a big daydreamer. I talk about science, history, and money a lot, and all my inspiration comes from God and people in history who I believe are 100 times smarter than me. And I always try to live up to their standard because I want to make them proud in the afterlife. I try to understand everyone's point of view. I talk to people the same way they speak to me, without them thinking I'm making fun of them. I believe I can change the world, even if it means sacrifice for the greater good. But I'm not one-sided, man. If my death meant a better life for all my brothers and sisters, whether they are white, African, Mexican, European, indigenous, I would in one heartbeat. I get angry quick, but I will love you with all my heart. I also have a fantasy of becoming immortal. Inspirations, or the people who inspire me, Warren Buffett, Nikola Tesla, Elon Musk, King Solomon, and I also have a love-hate relationship with my mom. But the fact is, if someone even looked at her funny, I would end their life. And yes, I have borderline psychopathy, I think. And I can't ever find a man as smart as me to have a conversation with. Everyone is stupider than I am. No one understands my life. So I feel alone in the world and throw myself into becomes all-powerful and rich to help people around the world, because if you're really smart and don't find something good to put all your time and energy and emotions into, you could turn yourself crazy. My uncle did it. He was so smart with an IQ of 180 and became crazy and couldn't remember who he was and babbled on about how he knew the key to the universe, which I believe. But a couple of years before I was born, he died, and he never got to put his knowledge into the world and never got to learn from him, unfortunately, because I hear stories of him and we are almost exactly the same. So yes, I personally think there is something genetic about it. But do I think that can stop someone from attaining knowledge? Definitely not. One of the smartest men in the world with the IQ of 400 taught himself before that his IQ was 100, and I'm a very spiritual person. My mind is all over the place, almost 247, which is why marijuana is my favorite drug. And Taking one Adderall has me finish 5 classes in one day at school. The teacher never seen anything like it. I was held back 2 years, 'cause they thought I was dumb. But I caught up those 2 years and finished above their standards. They would never let me skip grades, which really hindered my progress. I've always thought school was stupid and useless. If only you could see my face right now. Oh, if only you could see my face right now. Story 59. I'm not a genius, but I'm definitely above average intelligence. And whatever, bro. But I studied in uni with a literal genius. The guy slept on almost every class, was a drunk, and also a bit socially inept at times, but a good friend. He used to wake up during class and know stuff already and would understand everything. He calculated formulas that the professor would be deriving and show us the end result at the end of the class. This guy would show us a random graphic during class that he traced, and at the end of the class, all the calculations the professor did showed that graphic. He aced every course. 1-0 in every subject, which is the best grade. Bear in mind that this was a demanding engineering degree in one of the top unis in Germany. I'm 100% sure he's the smartest person I've ever known. Also, in case a German wants to claim the compliment, this guy wasn't German, so don't get cocky. Story 60. When you ask a question and they say something along the lines of, "It's complicated, but..." In other words, they have thought through the argument on both sides, weighed them against one another, and synthesized an answer that reflects the relative balance when all of those points are factored in. For example, is the COVID vaccine safe? Answer, it's complicated. And there's a lot that goes into testing and adverse events, but yes, the overwhelming evidence is that it is. Closely related, an intelligent person will deliver likelihoods rather than definitive answers, if the answer isn't definitive. For example, will candidate X or Y win the election? Answer, it's complicated. X will most likely win, maybe 70% of the time, but Y has a significant chance and may well end up winning. The factors that will make the difference are A, B, and C. Way to spin in some controversy there. Good on you. Story 61. I'm not sure if this is a good signifier of intelligence, but people I deem as smart are people who typically can hold a conversation over any subject. So often at bars or parties, do people just check out of a conversation when something they don't know or care about comes up? I love being able to deeply discuss things with people, whether it be about philosophy or a movie or people or anything. Just being able to hold a conversation with sufficient input is a great signifier that the person I'm speaking to has at least some wit and willingness to learn about them. I think the ultimate sign someone is smart is how they react to opinions and facts that disagree with them. Story 62. They tend to reject out of hand silly or illogical expectations. For example, the idea that not knowing everything indicates stupidity or inferiority or weakness. Takes others longer to realize that it's silly or illogical, while some never do. They don't undervalue skills or knowledge or the people laboring at those jobs just because it's seen as low class or low income or entry-level work. They understand that smart people are stupid, or appear to be, too, sometimes, and they laugh it off rather than get mad at you for witnessing it. Oftentimes, you'll feel or look the most stupid when learning new skills, and that's completely normal, but also refreshing for people who have always had the pressure and expectations of being highly intelligent. This may have the requisite of also being emotionally stable or having generally good self-esteem. As someone who's done martial arts for over 30 years, it took me over 30 years to realize that we are indeed all beginners. We're all learners. And when you are learning something new, you're gonna look foolish. And that failure is one of the best ways to learn. It's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you have had that pressure of constantly having to do things perfect and right. So be kind to yourself. Story 63. Smart people allow someone to tell their story all the way through without cutting in or getting sidetracked with their own story. Really taking in whatever is being said is a gift, both for the person telling the story and for me. When I can facilitate the letting go process, it can sometimes be draining for me as an empath to take on the negativity because it affects me physically. Intelligent people are more likely to be tuned in to sensitive people, and empaths can often physically feel the relief as the person lets go of their baggage. If I am the conduit allowing them to let go of their pain, they can sometimes feel the physical release. When I can help calm or relax a person, it can be like an endorphin rush for me. It's literally a palpable feeling of relief and calm. Story 64. There's no one sign or way to be intelligent, in my opinion. I don't believe in the 50% people stupid concept, just that a few rare people are stupid, some people are highly intelligent, and most people considered stupid never learn to apply their intelligence. But I've met some incredibly smart people before. Some were calm and careful and reserved. Some were incredibly fast, loud and energetic. Humor, arrogance, hubris, stubbornness. All of these are just traits of people. Executive functioning is often used as a sign of intelligence, so is spatial reasoning. I know a friend with neither, to the point that it's a genuine disability, but she's still genuinely intelligent to a degree that's hard to quantify. I know people who have no emotional intelligence whatsoever, but still come across as brilliant, and people who aren't always the most intelligent academically who are genuine geniuses in terms of emotions and people. Really, I think the answer is that you need to define the question better. What kind of intelligence? I actually can't argue with this. Well, sort of, but I agree with you. The kind of intelligence is important here. But if you're talking about 50% stupid people, I mean, that's an average, right? If you look at the average person and how intelligent the average person is, yeah, 50% are dumber than that. That's how averages work. Story 65. When a person can say, I don't know, and leave it at that. This especially applies to stuff like what happened before the Big Bang or what caused life to begin. Those are simple things that science has not found an answer to or theory for. For instance, I use this when talking to people about ghosts and whatnot. People tend to think if you can't have a solid explanation for what they experienced, then it has to be a ghost. Like, no, just because I can't answer the question doesn't mean that it has to be a ghost. I don't know is the correct answer in that situation. Same with what happened before the Big Bang. Of course, this doesn't only apply to big cosmetological questions, but yeah, just admitting you don't know the answer to something rather than making up an explanation in general. Not slamming on you about the whole ghost thing, but I would like to know your thoughts about various bits of evidence that have been caught via investigations. Not so much just the picture stuff, but the EVP recordings. Because I used to do EVP analysis in college, and I personally found some very interesting results. So I would like to know what you think about that kind of stuff. Story 66. Lots of the stuff I've seen posted here is, for lack of a better phrase, unduly polite and differential. In my experience, extremely intelligent folks are comfortable putting the hammer down on fools, especially fools who position themselves as some sort of authority, knowledgeable or otherwise, to be heard. Really intelligent people have the, well, actually, crowd for breakfast. They also frequently seek fools out for sadistic satisfaction. You also see a lot of dumb people model this behavior. The smart folks, though, tend to stay off the throttle until the fool has supplied them sufficient ammunition. Jumping in too quickly is usually a sign a person wishes they were super intelligent. That's also what gives super intelligent people the scent they're onto a fool worth playing with. Story 67. What is a subtle sign that someone's really intelligent? If you've guessed, they have a high level of curiosity. You have the answer. Intelligence without curiosity is like a body without a soul. You can have a highly intelligent but very superficial person, or you can have someone with very little intelligence but an infinite curiosity. The curiosity that we call subtle is the trait of being truly interested in the workings of the universe. It is the most noble and sublime of all intellectual faculties, and it's the most practical use to develop knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Story 68. They understand that there is different levels and types of intellect. For example, due to my upbringing, which was good but hard, and even though childhood bullying, which sucked ass, I ended up being pretty emotionally intelligent. Not the best at it, sure, but compared to my peers, I'm generally pretty quick on the uptake whenever someone's mood changes or understanding why certain emotions are being felt in both myself and others. By pinpointing the root of the emotional problem, I can offer practical solutions that can help make everyone feel better. However, I'm an absolute clown academically, particularly with math. I'm capable of learning math concepts, but they very rarely stick with me past the basics. I can also be a terrible listener, not because I'm not trying, but because I can have a hard time understanding some concepts without visual examples. Because of that, people get along with me well, but they don't rely on me for anything important and sometimes view me as naive or an airhead. I married someone who is the total opposite in this sense. Academically, he is very intelligent and is extremely capable of learning complicated concepts, math, and sciences with ease. It doesn't take much explaining of most subjects for him to understand what you're talking about and is pretty well read in general. Despite that, he's an emotionally void buffoon. He understands his own emotions, for the most part, but has a hard time relating to and understanding other people. Man just can't read a room unless it's an actual emergency. And to top it off, he's just a naturally abrasive person. So he ends up coming off more malicious and dickish than he actually is. He keeps his word, so other people rely on him, but very few would consider him a friend. Intelligent people understand that it isn't a wild concept unto itself, and that just because someone is stupid in one area doesn't make them stupid in general. I believe most of the population is pretty intelligent, just in different subjects and in ways not many would consider or even expect. Granted, I'm not very smart in most things, so I could very well be putting in more faith in that concept than I should. Story 69. So this may be a little narcissistic or conceited, so take it with a grain of salt. I spent a lot of time thinking. Not overthinking per se, but for years I've spent most of my days in thought. Very little I haven't thought of when it comes to my life and the things around it. So very rarely does someone say something in a way that I haven't thought of. A very common phrase of mine is, I've thought about that. I don't say it to sound cool or smart, just to indicate that whatever the person's idea is something that I've already pondered. On occasion, somebody will say something that puts me on my ass or stops me in my tracks. Whether it's something so simple as saying something in a new way or having a new idea altogether, and it's a surprise. So they immediately gain respect in my eyes because this surprise indicates to me that they're thinking in terms far above the ways I've thought or the quality or quantity of thought. I understand that people have different perspectives, but we're all speaking English, which means that perspectives are railroaded into a very limited set of words, sentences, and conversations based on context, which in turn leads to many people saying semi-similar things, which tends to also align with my own thoughts. So when someone breaks that mold, to me, it shows that they are a cut above everyone else. Interesting thing that you pointed out about the whole English concept. I highly recommend you research more different languages and new words to say certain concepts. Japanese is perfect for that because of the way that they interpret the world. It will literally change the way you think and conceive of things. I guarantee you new ideas and new ways of thought are going to come from that. Story 70. Just wanted to say, if you ask anyone this question, they'll subconsciously lead towards answers they themselves believe they exude. For example, I was asked a similar question of what is a better sign of intelligence other than IQ? And my first response was quick, good pattern recognition, considering the fact that I am a drummer and can pick up on rhythms fairly quickly. You can see why I said this. Then I thought about it more and said something along the lines of willingness to admit that you don't know. This is, again, something I at least strive to do and to an extent pride myself in. Simply, if I don't know something, I just won't talk about it. This is simply my inner desire to be considered smart by the people around me, seeing an opportunity to convince people I'm smart in a subtle way. I've seen many people have this same kind of response to these questions. They almost always say that a sign of intelligence is something they're good at regardless of how smart or dumb they actually are. Just expect some biased answers to this question, but there's always exceptions. Story 71. Transfer knowledge and explain a complex concept in simpler terms. A friend's husband has a Mensa membership. He shows great interest in topics that are new to him. His passion is in IT, and he told me that as soon as he knew I was a librarian, he wanted to know how I view databases and what my experiences were as a cataloger, and in general, what I could tell him about the profession. Fast forward a year, I'm doing a bachelor's program while working and have an IT question on an assignment I just couldn't understand. He offered that if I needed help, I could call anytime, so I did. Not only did he help me understand what the problem was, but he also had memorized all the terminology of librarianship and equated the IT terms to them. He was basically able to fully get on my level and talk my language and use examples I was familiar with. He told me he'd already done the equating terms part in his head when we were talking a year prior. Story 72. A lot of these are referring to wisdom or maturity, which are great and hopefully go along with intelligence, but not always. A sign of intelligence I look for is how quickly they engage and become comfortable with new subjects, ideas, tasks, etc. For tasks and the like, I would describe this as how many times do I have to explain it or show it before I can let someone go on their own. Many people who aren't book smart but are still intelligent have raw mechanical intuition or prowess and can quickly see all the parts of a task. A very basic example of this might be a kid who is shown how to sweep, and on top of properly sweeping, they move the furniture out of the way because they realize the dust flies behind the desk. They are able to take risks with a new activity because they understand how it works even before participating. For example, someone taking something they have never used before apart to fix it because they quickly gather that taking it apart doesn't break it and can be undone. For an idea or new subject, I would be looking for something like quickly using proper jargon or asking questions beyond what was initially given. A very basic example might be separately teaching a kid multiplication and division, and he immediately reaches the conclusion that division is just backwards multiplication. I realize that IQ tests are controversial, but they are designed to test one's learning prowess and intuition, not sheer knowledge. The language aptitude tests use complete gibberish and test to see if you recognize a pattern and are able to form educated guesses on how you can continue the pattern and apply it. Story 73. They don't crow on about being intelligent. That's a big one in my opinion. And they understand how to learn. That's a weird way of putting it, but like asking the right kind of questions when presented with a new situation or task, being able to look at situations with a critical but not overly emotional eye, approaching new problems from multiple angles until they understand what's going on. That kind of thing. Also, learning just to learn. I taught ESL to college-bound students for a long time, and that was one thing that made certain students really stand out. One girl, who later got a really difficult to obtain visa for exceptional people, would get high passing grades on essays in her high intermediate class, like there were still mistakes, but she fulfilled the requirements for the stage of language development in our program, but was always insistent I show her all her problems. It wasn't a grade thing. Usually if a student asked for feedback that detailed, it was a grade thing. I pointed out she'd already maxed out the points she could get. She just laughed. She said she didn't care about the grade, she just wanted to write better. Definitely one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Story 74. I'll give a reasonable answer. They have humility and depth. Smart folks can be quite up themselves. They've worked hard to get what they want and don't mind bragging about it, but that's about all they know. No depth. Ask a smart scientist who's dedicated their lives to how flies can land upside down about why it is if microwaves don't cook from the inside, but they melt butter from the middle, and they'll not be able to answer. But intelligent folks aren't necessarily smart. They may not have an education, for example, and you can't preach what you don't know. So the truly intelligent know it, don't really need to flaunt it, and can engage across multiple subjects and give valuable insight, unless you're a politician. Story 75. I think it's the novel way they view a problem. Many of us would say, upon a failure, well, that didn't work. I'll just try it again. Which persistence is fine, but it's the truly smart people who stop at the failure and ask, but why did it fail? They actually see problems different, like the discovery of penicillin. Alexander Fleming was studying the spread of the influenza virus and was running an experiment involving Staphylococcus culture. He came back from a 2-week vacation to find his culture had been contaminated with mold. Most normal people at that point would have said, "Whoops, guess I'd better just run the experiment again," and toss the moldy sample. But Fleming looked closer. He wanted to know why it failed and what he could learn from the failure. And he observed the big takeaway of the discovery. The mold killed the Staphylococcus. This became the discovery that blew the doors open on antibiotics, a major advancement for modern medicine. So the thing that always amazes me about intelligent people is their ability to observe, to take what most of us would consider to be mundane and understand it better. I've also noticed that very intelligent people may also take the time to first think about a question before answering it, and their answers may be unorthodox or be answered in a unique way, but they are always interesting, thought-provoking. And also, I think there are a lot of smart people that have made great discoveries or invented new things, but they are also different from each other. There's no one smart person personally. Some smart people are dicks. Some are very personable. Some are quiet and take some getting to know before you understand their brilliance. Some are the most extroverted person in the room. There are a lot of different kinds of smart people, and you can't really rely on the tropes of what a smart person should look like. Also, not all smart people are smart in every topic. I've heard clearly very intelligent and smart people in their own right say occasionally dismissive and outright ignorant things. Well, nobody's perfect. And smart people can be sometimes very dumb. Sure, you can tell me this super complex theorem that makes my head spin, but maybe you really don't know that much about economics as the economics professor, so maybe don't try and argue on a topic you know very little of. Story 76. People here are reciting things like how to tell someone is a critical thinker or how to tell someone is a curious learner. But when it comes to actual intelligence, I don't have any particular feel-good way of putting it, but I sometimes meet people where it feels like when they look at me, they see the whole me. The aperture through which our souls communicate for some reason has gotten wider, and vice versa. With people I'd view as stupid, it feels like communicating through a pinhole. It's super hard for me to gauge anyone's intelligence without talking to them myself. But there is a very particular gaze one might have when looking at someone else that, to me, is a very reliable indicator that you have more than a pinhole to work with. The kind of unfocused but intent look in the general direction of a person with no clear target and without it being about looking for signs of physical aggression or some other things, but still reacting to small changes in who you're looking at. It is a pretty rare gaze in general among intelligent and non-intelligent people, but anytime I've seen someone look at someone else like that, I've made a bet that I'm gonna find some higher than average intellectual achievements in that person's history. And every time I have been able to check, I have found those. Story 77. Being able to learn things through interconnecting different concepts in order to grasp the specific one. For instance, you have the butterfly effect presented in front of you, but you don't know what it is. You read about it, and the domino effect comes to mind, but it's one small wing flap that topples a domino piece, which then makes bigger dominoes fall consecutively. Just like when John Oliver had a segment where Billy Eichner, had to look up his name, was explaining retirement funds using giant dominoes that, in the end, crushed some actress whose name I forgot. This, in a nutshell, is the process of the interconnection of concepts. Think of it not as a rope with knots that represent ideas, linear and that you cannot bypass one to get to another, but more like a spiderweb, where you have concepts connected to each other individually and all at once at the same time, letting you skip some ideas to get to the one that is needed. Also, cognitive malleability, where the brain can reprogram itself based on newer information that contradict previous knowledge or beliefs. Story 78. There's a lot of different ways for people to be intelligent. If we look at what most would define as typical or traditional, I would say that it's likely something they ask in regards to a subject, or something they explain in regards to a subject. Then there's emotional intelligence, or emotional awareness. People who are unbelievably empathetic are able to light up rooms, always seem to get people engaged in conversation. The people who everyone likes at the party. They always seem to say the right thing, and you can tell when someone is this way just by listening to them. Some people are smart in terms of critical thinking or problem solving. You see this outlined in very unique ways across the spectrum. Take an athlete, might not be great in terms of understanding concepts on, let's say, science, but in the heat of the game, they can understand the patterns of the opposing team, adjust strategy, keep one step ahead. Or take a man or woman from an underprivileged community, put them below the poverty line, and watch them solve problems in real time when it comes to finding money, saving money, or spending money. Although inherently people who don't have money aren't great with money in terms of savings, but if you never have experience saving money, then how can you be expected to know how, especially when you don't know what the next week or month will even bring? Defining intelligence is difficult, especially taking into consideration what actually makes someone intelligent. And then trying to figure out how those manifest is harder when you consider all of the different walks of life people walk down and what role that privilege of a better education and a better family life plays into the perception. This is actually a very, very good take because, like all things related to people, there's so many different variables and switches and toggles that make up a person. People are so complicated. It's hard to say exactly what intelligence is. And yet everybody has their input here, and everybody's doing a really good job trying to pin it down. But the range of opinions or thoughts on the matter is so diverse. Story 79. All these people talking about high social skills where they can explain things with metaphors, simple so we can feel like we're intelligent, are used to science communicators because I have a highly intelligent mother and absolutely none of it applies. Not to her, not to her brother who is in the same league, not to the colleagues I've met. My mom has a PhD in mathematics and fluid dynamics, and she can't explain crap. She's so intelligent that she has a hard time understanding the difference between what we consider simple and advanced concepts within math, as she doesn't see the degree of difficulties. If it's explained to you, she expects that you understand it. And as far as I can tell, there's nothing in her field that she considers hard. The more complex math problems are just challenges to her she wants to dismantle. I don't think she ever thinks that things are difficult. Almost like unwrapping presents that have so many layers they haven't gotten to the present yet. Story 80. A lot of people in this thread are confusing intelligence with clever person that is nice to me. A lot of comments seem to focus on being socially adept, humble, making others feel nice, and so on. That really doesn't have that much to do with your IQ. While things like willingness to ask questions sounds logical, it doesn't have much to do with the person's innate ability to learn. It's more about curiosity. Willingness to ask could probably be associated with the general level of knowledge or insight, but not necessarily with intelligence. The only one I found so far was being able to hold opposing ideas in their heads and be fine with it. But even that, I don't know. I had an English teacher in 8th grade, and one of his big things was trying to help exercise students to hold multiple concepts in their head at once. And he would start at 2 or 3, and eventually he wanted to get you to the point where you had six concepts flowing at the same time. It was absolutely brilliant, and it really kind of separated the class in terms of who could do it and who couldn't. And generally, that's how you figured out who was going into honors class and who was going into college prep class. Story 81. That's a hard question because intelligence comes in many forms. You could be academically gifted, but socially inept. I think the big thing I notice as far as social discussions are concerned is someone's ability to see that there isn't really a right answer. Once I started seeing that every argument that's opinion-based as duality and everyone lives their own perception of right and wrong, it really messed me up. I find it super hard to have views on anything now because a little voice in my head tells me that while it may be my perception, it's not everyone's. And why do I think I'm so special as to have the correct answer? I look at people who see both sides, regardless of how they might feel, are socially intelligent, and kind of realize that everything's subjective, so nobody's right. I feel like there's also a good chance a person that thinks that way socially is probably academically gifted as well, or at the very least, a fairly deep thinker. Not referring to myself by any means, for I am a simpleton that took 26 years to start to grasp this concept slightly. Honestly, I'm really stupid. No, you're not really stupid. Maybe a little inexperienced, but I wouldn't say really stupid. You're on the right track, but keep in mind, there are rights. There are wrongs, there are facts, and there are opinions. Sometimes it gets a little gray. Hang in there. You'll get it with time. Story 82. The number one sign for me is when you see someone making a point of listening to another speak and hearing what they have to say. It sounds insignificant and a basic thing everyone does, right? Nope. It's incredibly rare in a world where people talk over each other, not allowing a point to be made, making judgments from the first few words of a sentence before understanding what is being said, and people appearing to have little interest in the feelings, views, or impact on others, only interested in themselves. Honestly, when people feel someone is interested in their views and that they count, the impact is massive. It shouldn't be deemed a skill, but these days, unfortunately, it is. Boom. That's mine. Story 83. I'm a mechanic. I had this kid come over to my workshop and he asked if he could borrow my tools to fix his bike, as he never had to do it before and didn't have tools at home. I thought I'd have to take time out of my day to help him fix his bike. About 3 hours later, I had forgotten about this kid, as he never asked me for anything. When he did, he asked me to look at the carburetor of his bike that he took over to me. He had slipped his carb in half from falling over. I got him a new one as a replacement, and before he left, he paid me for the time and the new carb. But before he left, I asked if I could ride his bike to see if it was running smoothly. It was one of the best bikes I'd ridden. I asked the kid where he learned to fix things like that, knowing carbs are difficult to notice if there's a problem, and he said he thought it just didn't look right. Story 84. They don't really say much. Also, intelligence can cover many areas. They also don't judge people upon meeting them. Some of us have computers between our ears. I, myself, have what I call monkey see, monkey do. You do something in front of me once or twice, I'll figure it out. Doesn't really matter what it is. Whether insulating a house to how to replace a radiator in an F-150, you can't do anything in front of me without me picking up on it. I'm sure there's others out there who take that to the next level. I know someone who knows like 7 different languages. I wouldn't be able to differentiate so many languages in my head. One last thing. I think God is a huge practical joker. Like when he gives a short or skinny guy a huge crank and the big buff dude only 3 inches. Anyway, we're all smart in our own way. I don't care who you are. None of us are born stupid. Some are just lazy. Doesn't make them stupid. Something tells me you got some good stories in there. I would more than willing to have a beer with you to get some of those stories out. Story 85. Curiosity is the biggest indicator. Anyone with a wide range of interests. Humor can also be an indicator. Being quick to laugh at things that take others a bit longer may show they get it before others do. A natural disrespect for authority is an indicator of intelligence. Intelligent people have a hard time accepting because I said so, or because I'm an authority figure, as an explanation or reason. Like the top comment says, code switching is a decent indicator too, for reasons explained there. One thing that is not a good indicator of intelligence is academic achievement. That's more an indication of hard work and discipline than intelligence. Story 86. It's actually really simple. People usually go to them for advice or when they are in the pinch, and they usually have a good solution that leave you better than you were. Other answers to the topic do not work in my opinion. Not every intelligent person is humble. I know ones that will literally say that they're awesome at something. They know their worth and they know what they know. Not every one of them will ask you questions, because often they got all the answers from you directly or not. They won't always be proactive. But whoever they are, people tend to consciously or subconsciously recognize how good they are and will approach them with stuff. So if you have, for example, a guy at company everyone goes to advice for, he's probably the intelligent one. Or he's the subject matter expert that's been there for 20, 30, 50 years and just refuses to leave because he thinks he's still going to get a pension, or is not confident enough to go somewhere else. But that's experience, not so much intelligence. Story 87. I worked in an industry which required a lot of social, emotional intelligence. There is a certain innate ability to adjust your personality and conversation style to fit various situations that heavily correlates to social or emotional intelligence and general critical thinking. So what we often do is have 2 people with totally different personalities interview them and see how they react. We usually just talk to them, joke around with them, try to get them to let their guard down a bit. Now, if they go too far and they are 2 totally different people in the interviews, then that is a negative. They still have to be their true selves, but they have to adjust their true selves to an extent to fit the different situations. If it's subtle but impactful differences, but that is perfect. Too far in either direction and it's not good. Those people who tend to excel at adjusting their personalities to fit different situations are almost universally intelligent people from what I've seen. Story 88. Interpreting really as truly. They don't worry about how smart you perceive them being. They are not afraid to be revealed as ignorant or uninformed, but are unwilling to remain that way. Not knowing is fine, never finding out is abominable. They are insatiably curious. They are capable of considering a situation with which they do not agree. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function, being able to argue something you don't believe. They often do not realize just how average everyone else's average is, and tend to perceive themselves as slightly above average rather than super smart, like those misled by the Dunning-Kruger effect. Interpreting really as extremely, half of what they say are words you know are English, but you are still not quite sure they are speaking another language. I'm considered a genius by clinical standards, and there are still people who start on about their field, and I just have to stare at them and then back them up to take 100 questions to figure out where they are even starting from. And I'm someone who is, in all fairness, smart enough to recognize what I don't know, where the holes are, what questions to ask, how to put together to follow them, and how to catch up on the spot enough to at least mostly understand what they're talking about, if not the details. Most people would just be completely lost in the first two sentences. Story 89. Most of the answers here reveal more about the poster's A, own insecurities, B, values, and C, unconsidered deductions. 1. The first problem with your question is most people who aren't trained in psychometrics have wildly varying definitions of what intelligence even is. I'm going to define it as the ability to recognize patterns when a given set of new data or experiences across a broad range of fields, including ones in which you have no formal training. Finally, intelligence can only be defined in relative terms. 2. A subtle sign is the office a-hole. The guy or gal is insufferable, yet nobody seems to ignore their suggestions. 3. A subtle sign is someone who seems to reach conclusions and solutions you cannot, even though you are both presented the same information. 4. It is not someone who raises other people's intelligence. While that's an admirable quality, it's not intelligence. Story 90. They observe more than they speak out. They can ask simple questions to see how someone formulates the answer and then assess them. Many people who are truly intelligent often have psychiatric problems, mostly noticed by others, but often not by themselves. They often can trigger someone into saying things, doing things, or similar that the person is first reluctant to say. They can be manipulative in a good but sometimes also a bad way. Example, a good psychiatrist can trigger you to speak out and then offer guidance. And someone with ulterior motives can trigger you into telling things for their own personal gain. Story 91. I've got a friend who is very bright. Whenever he needs to learn something for his job, he goes around to other people who are in the same role and asks them to show him whatever it is, and he told me that most of the time he knows 99% of what they are telling him, but he just stays quiet and they eventually tell him that 1% thing that he's been missing. He does this with several people and ends up learning a lot off these people. I think to sum up that a sign of being intelligent is being comfortable enough to just listen without having to jump straight in and act like a know-it-all, because people would be less likely to want to teach a person like that. Story 92. I sincerely think many here are confusing things like intelligence, their mental capabilities, how they draw connections between one concept and another, instruction, having knowledge or information, wisdom, the instinctive conclusion you get from an experience, yours or otherwise, that usually derives from a mistake and allows you not to repeat it, and personality, their pride, their goals, their social skills, etc., and other detached stuff. Plus, not only are those things not always at the same time, they are not there all the time either. There are very intelligent people who are incapable of explaining it to others or communicating efficiently. There are people that fit every criteria in the post, yet they do something stupid. Everyone does stupid things here and then. But yes, I personally consider that an intelligent person, regardless of their personality, should be able to understand and explain something in simple terms. The thing is, hardly all of them would have the capabilities to do so in a way that is not condescending. Also, not every brilliant mind is flexible enough to make good metaphors either. Story 93. My closest coworkers are engineers. They are super intelligent, both technically and emotionally. They have a love for teaching and getting others engaged in their passions. They explain things clearly and understand how to change their wording if you don't understand the first time. They never treat anyone like they're stupid. They just find another way to create understanding. That's a gift. I'm truly blessed to work with them, and they help me look forward to work every day. They've quickly become like brothers to me. Story 94. If they use Reddit, we are a group of highly sophisticated atheist masterminds who make Christians shudder in fear. I guarantee the average IQ of a random Redditor would far exceed any other social media filled with brainless normies. Also, we house some of the largest power in the world and can easily change the course of human events whenever we want. Our power rivals even larger UN member nations due to our presence worldwide. I guarantee that Reddit would topple entire regimes if we all, or even a fraction of us, if we tried. We should have used this power for good when the orange Cheeto was in office. People on other social medias, simply speaking, are idiots compared to us Redditors. Yes, well then, I have a port just for you, sir. Story 95. They deliver their knowledge in a way that's informative, intriguing, and passionate. They inform someone about something they know, no matter how smart or even random it is, in a way that makes you want to know more about it and to know more from them. It's like telling a friend good news, or if it's not a happy thing, telling them about something that made you sad, but it's important to know. The most intelligent people I know had to face people acting like they were idiots or didn't really know what they were talking about. It taught them that they could be rude or forceful to spread their knowledge. They had to tell it to people as if it were the most common and entertaining things they'd ever heard. Story 96. I think there are a lot of answers conflating intelligence and communication skills. Many people that are extremely intelligent are terrible communicators. I think there are a few factors related to the appearance of intelligence. Communication skills are the ability to convey a concept. Knowledge is the accumulation and recollection of information. Wisdom is a bit more abstract, but I see it as the ability to apply calm logic. Observational skills are the ability to assess an environment to acquire information without it being directly provided. These all can appear to be intelligence, but I don't believe they strictly are. Intelligence is the ability to take information, either provided or from knowledge or observation, understand it, and apply it. The more intelligent the person, the faster and deeper the understanding for a given set of information. The best subtle indicator of intelligence is the ability to receive new information and immediately understand it, as well as those who are familiar with that information. Best example for emotional or social intelligence is entering a new social situation and almost immediately understanding the dynamics of the group. A technical example can be seen when someone joins a new project that they are not familiar with and can almost immediately understand the details, as well as those who have had extensive time to process the information. Story 97. I don't know if I agree with the general headline of this topic. Intelligence is relative to the awareness of the environmental need compared to others. But there isn't much that separates one type of intelligence versus another. Subtle signs of intelligence is going to get intersected by outward appearance, mannerisms, behavior, and other relatively desirable traits that take time to determine. But even this notion dismisses that Cro-Magnon-looking Larry and Ugly Betty can't appear intelligent on the surface. So what can subtly define a more surface-level awareness that allows an instant recognition of said intelligence in others? In my opinion, if you want the simplest observation for this recognition, it would have to be the eyes have it all. We know what this means without adjectives describing eyes as soulful, thoughtful, and full of other meaning. We see it in nature and intuitively recognize this counterpoint in others. Simply put, I can't think of anything more subtle than the look in someone's eyes. Story 98. I feel like the closer we get to our peak level of conversation, the more our insecurities play into how we attribute intelligence to the other party. Intelligence also means less and less as the ego grows, because The degree at which someone attributes intelligence to you is complemented by the respect you give them. I don't care how smart you are on a subject. If you denigrate others in your effort to express your thoughts, then you're not smart enough to respect your own time. Like Treebeard in Lord of the Rings. Anything worth saying is worth taking time to say. But more so, respecting the art of communication can really change how people view your intelligence. I personally attribute intelligence to patience. Taking the time in conversation to think your words out and not feel pressured to keep the flow of the conversation going is something I admire. Story 99. I've known Mensa members with IQs north of 150. What I've found peculiar about them is that they seemingly jump between unrelated topics. They aren't unrelated. You just have to work like a dog to try to keep up with them. They see things, relationships between things, and concepts you don't. Or what might take you a long time, if ever, they see almost instantly, almost intuitively. One thing admitted to me is they can find conversation with common folk not boring, but frustrating, because they can't be satisfied intellectually in the exchange. You're doing everything to keep up. They're not even trying. Intelligent people don't have to have book smarts at all to be hyper-intelligent. The insight just comes through them. Story 100. Well, first, there's the different areas of intelligence. So without defining intelligence, it's difficult to answer. Then there's a matter perceiving intelligence. If you take two people that have a gap of 2 standard deviations, 30 points difference on an IQ scale, the less intelligent person will have a difficult time understanding what the other person is communicating. Since we know in the US the average IQ is 98, the majority may see things differently. Then there's the psychosocial element. A toxic, intelligent person will manifest differently than someone that's intelligent and well-grounded with good self-esteem and positive intentions. Defining intelligence also could be subjectively different for every person. For example, if my IQ was 90, I might see someone with a higher IQ of 110 as being intelligent versus someone with an IQ of 140 that may not. In essence, you could say intelligence is relative to your frame of reference. And that could hold true of values and morals, which can shape what we deem as intelligent. For example, someone that believes in God, someone that operates out of spirit may look like an idiot for their beliefs while others may not. So I would say your answer lies within you as a unique person. Ah, now we got an interesting angle. I like that. The relativistic perception of intelligence based on where you stand on the ladder. Marinate on that. Story 101. I don't know if this is valid. This is kind of my thing that I automatically assume means someone is very intelligent and it's their eyes. People who are super intelligent never really miss anything. If you look into their eyes, a lot of what they're actually communicating is through their eyes. If someone says a backhanded compliment, someone who isn't that intelligent will let it gloss over or maybe realize it later. But if you give someone intelligent a backhanded compliment, they'll usually look at you in a way and then decide their reply after, and it'll usually happen very quickly. I wouldn't say I'm the smartest because a lot goes over my head, but intelligent people have intelligent eyes. Story 102. Something that a lot of people overlook is that the really intelligent don't typically have a talent for social situations. That is, unless they are really intelligent socially. The brightest minds that the world has ever known had high-functioning autism. They all fell on the autism spectrum, even if just a little. The term high-functioning autism, from what I read, actually was coined in Australia and referred to people with a high IQ. Generally, it means that the IQ is probably quite high. It also means that they struggle socially. The reason I know this is because I was diagnosed in preschool, and I had to work hard to cover up some of my social flaws, and by high school, they could hardly notice it. Though the school did notice it. I had talked to my therapist a little while before, and he had said that I am extremely high functioning, which means that I am pretty socially aware. I did some research and found what I had mentioned about high functioning autism, though sometimes I do question my intelligence. I do know that I have a lot of knowledge, but I know that I need more always, which is why I question my intelligence. Story 103. Critical thinking and attractiveness. The most common differences you will see in a smart person versus a dumb person would be use of logical fallacies. For example, a dumb person would insult someone in an argument for disagreeing with them. This wouldn't solve the argument at all. How they argue. Smart people want to learn from an argument. A dumb person wouldn't learn anything. Instead, purely try winning the argument with straw man arguments and false dichotomies. How much they swear. Studies show that smarter people swear much more than average or dumb people. And rethinking. Smart people would take time on decisions, ideas, etc., and think again. Dumb people are usually biased. Story 104. From a very young age, I already knew that my sister was really intelligent. When I was about 6 or 7 and my sister was 3, we used to argue about whose dolls were whose. And then one day, she asked our mom to write her name on the feet of a Barbie. And when she was playing with it, and I started telling her that the Barbie was mine, so she showed me her name on the Barbie's feet for me to shut up. But take into account that she didn't know how to write at that age. So she asked our mom to do it, and none of us suspected a thing. Nowadays, she's a really good student, even though she's, well, still annoying as hell. Story 105. They are endlessly curious. Smart people are smart enough to know just about everything is quite complicated, and so they have a constant awareness of the gap between what they do and don't understand. Since most people will never truly understand anything fully, the awareness of this gap will be a constant presence in their life and motivate greater and greater levels of understanding. This will, in turn, facilitate further development and refinement of the ability to learn itself. The pace of learning, that is, IQ, roughly speaking, will be constant, but the depth and breadth of understanding will continue to grow, motivated by that perceived gap between what is understood and what isn't. But you have to be smart enough in the first place to be able to grasp what you don't understand. Smart enough to be able to perceive there is a bigger or more intricate picture, even if you don't know what it looks like. That's why perpetual curiosity is a sure sign of intelligence. Story 106. The people who even unconfidently move through the days just a bit differently. For example, they're more matter-of-fact to even depressed sounding most of the time, or at least it seems that way if you're not really listening to what they're saying. It's the way they analyze the world and then spit it back out verbally. They can F around while being super focused, but they tend to do this in their native environments where they feel really comfortable. Watch them in this habitat sometime and get really ready to feel outclassed. Some of the best in-the-moment song parodies are made while solving an equation or writing code. They get very upset over small things, but they also grieve the big things way before they happen. If their pet is suddenly sick, they're in a fret. But when grandma dies and the family is all broke up, they have a calm, cool head and keep things moving. Story 107. They can realize things. I don't mean just discover or learn something completely new. That, in my opinion, is more smarts. Instead, they can let things or concepts that are new to them and haven't thought about before just sit and be indifferent about them for a while, instead of throwing it out the window as first instinct. Many people rush themselves to make a conclusion on something right away, as a result of many school or grading systems too, forgetting that to comprehend or realize something fully takes time sometimes, that admitting to yourself you haven't made up your mind about something or don't know something as of now is not the end of the world. And when people like this can't come up with a conclusion on the spot, some abandon it or just don't care about it altogether. Hence, they often experience that moment, everything clicks, and so they seldom realize things. Just because what someone says to you now doesn't make sense or you can't relate to it as of now doesn't always mean it has no sense in it at all or isn't relatable to people other than yourself. At least for me, I guess. So I guess it's somewhat that they fear the uncanny less. Story 108. That they learn from their mistakes. Intelligence, though, can be really relative. If you don't suffer from a brain disorder that seriously impacts cognitive reasoning or maturity, for example, like Down syndrome, then you have the ability to be intelligent. Intelligence is really about education and learning skills that help you use that knowledge best. And it can be for many things. Someone amazing at engineering or building could be an absolute idiot when it comes to design, for example, which is why architects are a thing. So I say intelligence is relative and based on your decisions in life and the knowledge you gain. I also want to say that an intelligent person can be very different than an empathetic person. My brother, for example, is a very intelligent man. He graduated college on the dean's list with a 4.0 GPA and honors, valedictorian or whatever it is they have for university. He's in PR and just as well informed and very hard to debate because he's so smart. But when it comes to empathy, it really takes him a long time to understand how others work or why his harsh and critical words hurt others. Some would say his behavior itself is stupid and immature, but he is genuinely intellectually smart. Story 109. I don't like to think of intellect as one thing, but a multitude or a collective of different skills and traits that show at the end of the day. To me, confidence is a big one. The way they carry themselves and manage to hold engaging conversations is amazing, something I've always struggled with. So whenever I see it in someone else, I just watch and listen in awe. I like to think that I'm super observant, sometimes a little too observant. I tend to find myself thinking about the most random crap after looking at something, and then lose myself in thought. Is anyone else like this? I think it's weird. No, that's not weird. That's just you being you, boo-boo. Keep on keeping on. Story 110. They're not part of a group of any sorts, political, religious, etc. They don't watch the biased news networks out there. They march to the beat of their own drum. They take care of themselves first. They have a long-term life plan. They make good decisions. They surround themselves with like-minded individuals. They invest in themselves. They are open-minded. They are accepting of others for who they are. They don't see color, race, ethnicity, creed, etc. They just see others as simply human beings. They have a northern pointing moral compass. They are selfish when they have to be and selfless when they can be. They can read other people. They can pick up on social cues. They have a sense of wit. They think 10 years ahead. They have a specialized skill. They can lead and manage others. They have the gift of gab. They seem more mature for their age. They are organized. They are realistic. They are practical. They fear nothing. They keep themselves healthy physically and mentally. They teach themselves something new every day. They are blunt. They are sympathetic, but not sensitive. Words don't hurt them. They can control their emotions. They can manipulate. They have competence. They are wise. They have the ability to educate others. And most importantly, they can change someone's life for the better. You did not read the assignment. Go back, reread it. Go, I give you an F. Story 111. I feel like there are all different kinds of intelligence, or smarts. Like, for example, I'm really good at writing, and people be like, did you actually write that? Ha ha ha. But not great at vocalizing. Like, hate presentations, but getting better. I prefer to be underestimated because I'm quirky, or I don't know, lack common sense, I guess. Or like my sister is smart in a way that she'll memorize every number in a phone and has great sense of direction and can build, but says she can't write an essay, but I think she can learn it easily. Whereas I have an honors degree in sports science and nutrition, love my psychology, but couldn't build anything to save my life. So more book smart. I feel I am wise with experiences, like with people. Could talk to anyone one-on-one when I find common ground, but an introvert at heart. Like, take a while to come out of my shell because I like to suss things out in my own head first, like a new job, seeing how people react to each other first. Like someone noticed right away today. They're like, you have a damn good memory, because I'm like, I never forget a face. He was in my high school. People do tend to come to me for advice on personal circumstances because I can relate and empathize. My brother is most definitely a genius. His intelligence in everything is just something else. Them escape rooms, turning pictures into equations and solving X. I'm like, how do you even know that? Computers, anything. He doesn't have a lot to say, but you know when he does, he really put a lot of logic into it. Very well respected. I just watched someone today, actually, who really struck a chord. She says at first you'll always be judged on by looks because they don't have anything to go on. Looks like a Barbie doll type. Not anything untoward. That's what my older work colleague called me. Her wee Barbie doll. So she was told that's why you're perfect, because they'll underestimate your intelligence. Which she's highly educated in interviewing criminals, forensic, an author, etc. But when she opens her mouth, like says previously, she just eludes confidence, and you're fascinated to listen to her. I can't remember her name right now, but I'm going to buy and read her book. It's called Bulletproof. She was on an Empowering Women interview. I'll need to look her up. Definitely very wise, intelligent woman with lots of life experiences. Story 112. They ask questions when others might just accept things, being vocally open to this. For instance, why is this like this? When others will just accept something. It shows the desire to learn and understand. It's a catch-22 because it can suck sometimes, and you know it. Think about it. You realize we all just accept things at some point, right? Like our conscious minds don't believe there's any reason to question something. It becomes logical as you have in your mind already reached a logical answer. It's literally part of the driving wheel of humanity and in our nature to question things. Sometimes even to what we consider a detriment and call overthinking something. Other times, overthinking is actually progressive thought, as if we eventually understood and accepted everything there would be no avenue for change. Story 113. How much they care about intelligence. It's on a bell curve. Dumb people don't care about intelligence. As they get smarter, they care more because they feel superior to others and have a large in-group that feel the same. As they get more intelligent, they ask themselves if intellect really matters. And they realize that just because you can do fancy equations in your head doesn't make you important or special or better, just smarter. They see other people who don't sit on their ivory towers of genius, people who go out there and make a difference, people who actually improve lives, make a difference, and they realize that they aren't superior, just smarter. They can do so much more than others, but so much less in other ways. I'm fairly smart. I don't qualify for a Mensa card, but who does? And I thought that I was above others. But then I started to look at what I had accomplished. I had nothing. I had a piece of paper that said I was smart. I didn't have anything special. I haven't traveled. I hadn't talked to anyone with other worldviews. I was just on an island with other people like me. And we just spent our time patting each other's backs and saying how important we were. I used to idolize Stephen Hawking for his intelligence. Now I idolize him for his humor, his humility, and his perseverance against what most would see as a condition worse than death. He put together a party and released the invitations a day late, asking for time travelers to show up. He, when asked about alternate universes, specifically if there was a universe where One Direction stayed together, didn't get offended and asked for the person who I thought was wasting his time with a ridiculous question, practically insulting his life's work, or so I thought at the time, to leave, and said, finally, an important question. He knew the value of intelligence. He knew that it is just another tool in your toolbox. It's important, but it's still just a tool. I admire his intelligence, but now I admire him so much more for his strength of character. Smart people care about their intelligence, but if their main character trait is their intellect, they really aren't that smart.